Let's open with a karakia. Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai, e hi aka ana te atakura he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Apologies for lateness from Councillor Wolf, and I think that's the only apology that we've got. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Saw and Councillor Gaylor, all those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Thank you. Conflict of interest declarations, presuming there are none. Confirmation of the public minutes of the council meeting on Thursday the 10th of April 2025. To have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Ropata and Councillor Connolly. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Passed, thank you. Confirmation of the public excluded minutes of the council meeting on Thursday 10th of April 2025. Got Councillor Kirk-Bernand and Councillor Staples. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Paper passed, thank you. Feedback in the proposed, probably should be on the proposed 2025-26 annual plan and budget finalisation. Step forward. Okay. Tyler Sophia, in your hands.
Morena koutou. There we go. Kia ora, through the chair. We want to acknowledge the significant mahi that's gone into shaping this proposed 25-26 annual plan, and of course thank you to council and our colleagues organization-wide. As you know, we've managed to bring the rates increase down from our projected 14.5 to 9.72. And of course, that's without compromising our commitments to delivering our core services and progressing our key initiatives. We took the inform approach to the engagement that we agreed to February, and we went out to our communities to give them the opportunity to understand the changes and to share their perspectives. While the engagement levels were, of course, modest, as you'll have seen in the report, the feedback, particularly on affordability, public transport, climate action, has reaffirmed the importance of our transparent trade-offs and clear communications. Of course, officers have reviewed this input and are recommending that we proceed without any substantive changes to the draft annual plan. And today we are also asking to confirm that we can finalize the budget so that the annual plan can be brought to the council for adoption at the end of June.
No. Okay. Councillor Staples.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is regards to attending a meeting in Wairarapa last week on the Wahine flood scheme, and we were confronted with an eye-watering rate increase, which the group could not agree to and have asked for more work to be done. So my question is, if I vote in favour of number 4 to proceed with finalising our annual plan with a 9.72 rate increase, how is that going to, will that be majorly affected if the flood schemes, and there's more than one to sign off, decide that they don't like the rate increases that finance have proposed?
Come in, Ali.
Through your chair, we're aware of this and some work has been done to look at that particular rate right now. I don't have where it's landed. Stephen's off sick today, so I haven't got that in front of me and can't ask him, but I know there's work being done to look if we can mitigate it for next year, either by reducing expenditure and or a use of reserves in that space. So we will come back to you on that when we do the final budgets.
For context, is that like a pest rate or a flood rate?
It's a targeted rate. That was the first of the scheme meetings I'd attended, so we've got more to go, and I imagine if they're confronted with a similar targeted rate, it will be the same question. So I'm not at risk in voting in favour of 4 for this work to come through.
Not at this point, because we are still looking at the options, and we will be working on that with the environment group.
Okay. Further questions? Councillor Kirkpatrick.
Mine's just a technical question following up from last year in regard to the ticket shortfall which has been capitalised. Is that still being allocated on the basis of part of it as a transport rate split rather than a general rate split?
Through you, Chair, for the annual plan for next year, the public transport targeted rate budget has been balanced based on the reduced patronage and fare forecast.
Sorry, I was just making sure that the capital amount that we're amortising over 10 years, that costs there are being allocated as part of the transport budget, not the general budget, because the distribution across our ratepayers is quite different between the two.
Through your Chair, sorry Chris, I misunderstood the question before. Yes, that loan has been repaid under the PT budget and rate allocation.
Okay. Councillor Duffy.
Morena koutou. The question relating to paragraph 21, where submitters suggested a revised approach to democratic services, and another one about public education on the Māori constituency referendum. Could you just elaborate on what the specific points were there, please? Well, particularly the first part, and then in terms of the Māori constituency referendum, I guess, what are our plans?
I apologize, I don't recall specifically the things that you're asking, sir. Through the chair, I believe that the first point was regarding the openness of our workshops, and in regards to the second point,
I think the second point's clear. I guess it's what we're planning to do, which perhaps is a different meeting. So thank you. Workshops.
Councillor Connolly.
Sorry, I'm just harking back to Councillor Staples' question because I didn't entirely understand the answer. When we're voting for recommendation 4, that 9.72% rates increase, is that just for the general rate as opposed to any targeted rates, and thus we can pass that recommendation without impacting on targeted rates, including the targeted rate that Councillor Staples was referring to? Or I guess it seems wrong to adopt the general rate increase if one of the options that you're exploring regarding the flood funding the flood works or the flood scheme is to increase the general rate in order to decrease the targeted rate in relation to flood. So if the second option is going to be considered, i.e. the way to fund that would be through an increase in general rates, then we can't vote for that until you've actually done the work. If you're saying that the two are completely separate, then I think we need to maybe some words specifying what that 9.72 rates increase, which rate that actually refers to, so that then we can make targeted rate decisions down the line without affecting that.
Through you, Chair. The rates increase is always the total rates. We don't do the allocation until the end of the process, which we are starting to do now, to bring for the adoption of the rates resolution at the end of June. So we will have the breakdown at that point. In terms of the rate we have just discussed, that will be part of that process. And it's a very small number of ratepayers and a very small dollar amount that would unlikely have any impact, if not 0.01% or something on the total number. I don't know the exact amount, but it is small. So you are not impacting anything by putting forward this for us to bring forward again in June.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lappin.
Reference point 17 and 19. Are we Are we okay with that? That seems to me to be a very kind of conservative, if not below what we would expect, level of engagement. And there's two ways of looking at that, I guess. You could look at it in terms of overall it's a general endorsement of what we do, or two, do we need to look more close? I know we've had these debates before, or do we need to look closer at how we engage around it? I just get a sense with the reference to such a low number of engagement. I don't know whether that's an issue that we need to address or not, but I'm just asking.
Through the chair, we don't feel it is, as this was an inform and engage approach rather than a consultation. We weren't specifically seeking feedback. However, we do receive feedback, and we like to share that with you folks. And that small sample doesn't represent the reach that our engagement had, which was much wider.
Okay. If there are no further questions, do I have a mover and a seconder for this paper? Councillor Laban and Councillor Nash. Do either of you wish to speak to the paper? If there's nobody else, all those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Paper passed. Thank you. Item number 7 is a rebudgeting of operational capital expenditure from 2024-25 to 2025-26. Morning.
Good morning,
Hands,
and
Ashwin.
thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. The purpose of this paper is to seek approval to move some of the operating and capital budgets to the next financial year. They basically relate to projects which have been committed but not yet completed. These projects have been rated, and by moving the budgets, we are trying to ensure that we are not rating the community twice. We'll take the paper as read, and we are happy to take any questions from the councillors.
Technical paper, really. So, a question, Councillor Conley.
Just in relation to the Timarua water treatment plant project, I had thought that because we were trying to get one part of that project working for this last summer, which we did in fact do, we got it online at like February, that we were bringing money forward rather than bringing money backwards. So I'm just wondering if you could explain that.
I think from memory, last financial year, we did bring some funding forward, but we still had budget in this year, and that's where we are running for Timarua. We're about 17 million of the 22 million carry forward portion underspent this year, and so it's needed for next year, so we're carrying it forward rather than doing another budget process with Wellington Water.
I just wonder if it's probably not for you, Ellie, it's probably for Julie, to just provide me with a couple of sentences just to make sure that, because there's another tranche of that project that's meant to be coming online, and I just want to make sure that that is still tracking.
Okay. Councillor Galen.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? I've got two questions. One is, can somebody please explain specifically for the variation of the $300,000 relating to the plan change for Kapiti, like what's that $300 buying? And then on the next page, top of the next one, the Environment EV Partnership Kaupapa funding, nearly $2 million, which is much, much larger than all the others. Again, what things, or what are the reasons for that, please?
To which I think I'll defer to Leanne for the first question.
Through the chair, as you know, in terms of Kapiti, we decided to carry on with non-regulatory changes, but not regulatory changes, which is why there's some budget available there. In terms of the what the money's going towards, it's going for running the change process through the RPS, and I'm not quite sure what that variation is caused by, other than the fluctuations of what it normally costs, but I can get the details of that if that would be helpful.
Oh, kia ora koutou. Just following on from that,
the variation, the rebudgeting for the iwi part of the budget is because we've had a delay in getting our tranche funding across to mana whenua, so it's paid in tranches. That's part of our assurance to working together across projects. If you like, I can get a list ready if you want to have a look at the detail of projects. We can have that for you. Yeah.
Yes, please. Because if you see, it's like nearly $2 million, and it is significantly more than every other area. And does that mean that it is the projects across all 6 iwi?
It's 5 iwi currently.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
And through your chair, the list of projects is quite extensive. We'd have to send it out separately. We do have it, but it's a very long list.
Okay, any further questions, councillors? Councillor Staples?
Thank you. Mine's just a little minor question, an operational thing, but I'm curious. On page 33, where we're talking about corporate services and fleet vehicle purchases, it said that the new ute model was not fit for purpose. And I'm just sort of, if somebody later over morning tea could tell me what was wrong with the new utes, I'm just curious.
No, I asked that very question this morning, Councillor Staples, so through the chair. Basically, as we're trying to transition to some form of the fleet being hybrid, not fully electric hybrid, they have a different configuration where you put your auxiliary battery, and some of these utes need auxiliary batteries to run things like winches and radios when remote places, etc. So they've been working through how you can get a specific ute with an auxiliary capacity and still get some hybrids into the fleet. So that's been resolved, and we can start to procure new fleet.
Very good. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this paper? Councillor Staples, Councillor Connolly. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Passed. Thank you. Changes to the Low Carbon Acceleration Fund, paper 8. Right, Susan Jack, take us away.
Good morning, councillors. This paper carries on the matters discussed at Climate Committee for formal endorsement. They concern the accountability criteria for the Low Carbon Acceleration Fund. At Climate Committee in March, the recommended criteria were accepted, and 2 issues were required further development, and we have done that. We draw your attention to that in paragraphs 22 and 23 regarding living wage criteria and requirement to promote the LCAF amongst successful recipients. The second matter, also covered in this paper but was a separate paper at Climate Committee, was regarding the extra emissions units gifted to us by MPI. 21,993 units we thought we would need to return. We do not need to return. And the options for those were considered at Climate Committee regarding how we should dispose of them, what we should do with them. And the recommended option was option B, to put them into the Low Carbon Acceleration Fund. Those units, the value is constantly changing. I'm happy to say the price of carbon has gone up since the 1st of May when this paper was written. However, just as a heads up, we're not beyond the threshold, even with these extra units, where we could allocate more funding from the LCAF at present.
Okay. Any questions, councillors? No questions. A mover and a seconder? Councillor Duthie, Councillor Saw, speaking to this? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, none. Paper passed. Thank you. But you're staying where you are for paper 9, organisational emission targets. This paper's been replaced. I think you have a copy on your desks. We will get Jake and Sophia just to give us a sense of the differences or the difficulties. Jake.
Thank you, Chair. So the updated report fixes errors and to align with the councillor decisions at Climate Committee. Apologies for that, but the decision made at the Climate Committee concerning our net emissions organisational target for net emissions was that we would be climate positive by 2044-45 financial year. So the amended paper says that. So moving on, this report seeks the approval of council to remove the existing net emissions targets for 2025, 2030 and 2035, and then to adopt the new net emissions target for option B, 2044-45, that we will be climate positive from that year onwards. It also seeks endorsement of a new gross emissions target of 84% reduction in our organisational emissions by 2039-40, which is option C, the option that aligns with the global pathway to limit climate change, global warming to no higher than 1.5 degrees. That was the that option requires further analysis because that level of reduction is beyond what our current high effort scenario gives us. You'll see in the the attachment 2, there is a description of the scenarios and what's included and what is not in the scenarios, including the high effort scenario. So essentially, to understand the financial implications of achieving 84%, we need to go back and look at the residual emission sources that the council is likely to have in 2039-40 and consider what we can do about them. Just to give you a flavour, there's quite a lot of diesel emissions from, for example, buses replacing trains, which would need to be dealt with. There's also quite a lot of diesel from heavy machinery that we use for, for example, flood protection operations and moving rocks around and so forth. So, we've recommended an endorsement of that target to give us some time to go through what we could do about those residual emissions and bring that detail back to council for your consideration.
Councillor Nash.
Oh, thanks for this. And I was just thinking, you see in recommendation 2, the new 2, it's 3, 84% reduction in 2039-2040 compared to 2018-2019. I wondered if you could, not today, but at some point, get us a line graph that shows starts at baseline 2018-2019 with our emissions and just takes them to where we are today, so we can see where we are, which I believe is lower than 2018-2019, and then shows us the kind of path to 2039-2040, which we're adopting today, assuming we do, and then shows us the sort of current policy and projects funded, where that line goes in terms of emissions reduction, and then there'll be presumably some sort of gap that we need to fill within the next 15 years. Could you produce? You might already have such a graph.
Absolutely, that would be very easy to produce. We haven't got graphs in here, but the numbers are there. There's not a lot of detail or breakdown of what our residual emissions are and what's happened. Currently, sorry, through you, Chair, we've got a 22% reduction on 2018-19 as what our last inventory shows. Yeah.
Councillor Still?
Thank you. That's actually a very similar question I was going to answer, but I was also wondering where a lot of our scenarios are contingent on central government funding or policy decisions as well. So those will have a material bearing on whether we can achieve these targets, particularly in the decarbonisation of our PT fleet. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering as well, do we have anywhere where there's those projections of if we have our best practice aims, so for example, decarbonisation or changing our urban form, that we can see that we would be meeting regional targets. I know this is our organisational targets, but I'm just extending out to what our regional role is. Do we have those as well, where, you know, if we did change our urban form, if we did decarbonise at the rate that we thought we were, where would we be as well, to also indicate that gap? And so I guess in the future that shows how decisions that are being made today may be slowing down some of our progress. Does that make sense?
Through you, Chair. Yes, it does. That work on regional emissions modelling was done for the Regional Emissions Reduction Plan, which was a project run through the Wellington Regional Leadership Committee. So yeah, that issue was litigated. We can provide that work to you if you would like. Yeah.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. One of the key initiatives to reach these targets is around electricity generation. Where are we at with our electricity transformation initiative?
Through you, Chair. We're running a project and we're investigating the options. The scope of that project involves council land and council buildings, and also looking at things called power purchase agreements, where the council essentially acts as an anchor client for a new solar farm or wind farm, but is wholly owned by a third party. And so we are investigating those options. We're looking closely at the council land and its potential. There are a few spots which have promise. It's unlikely those are sufficient area combined to get to where we need to be in terms of providing 100% of our own renewable electricity. So I would expect that if we were to do that, we would have to have another stage of the project that looked at the potential of private land, either purchase or lease or something like that, in order to achieve those aims, assuming that the power purchase agreement doesn't solve the problem for us.
Okay. No further questions. Mover and a seconder on this paper. Councillor Duthie and Councillor Gaylor. Either of you wish to speak to this? No. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Paper passed. Thank you. Paper 10 is the Local Government New Zealand Annual General Meeting 2025. I think we can probably take the paper as read. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Nash, Councillor Saw. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Paper passed. Thank you. Paper 11 is Greater Wellington's Quarter 3 24-25 Summary Report. Nigel, are you in the hot seat?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As always, we'll take this as read, but this is our Quarter 3 update. I won't highlight much in here other than to note the March bus patronage, which was a record, which is something to be celebrated. And the flood protection work we're doing with the Crown Kānoa funding, which, as you know, we've got funding for 16 projects in this region, which is a hefty share of what was allocated via Kānoa, 15 of which are in the Wairarapa. We had Minister Jones over there a couple of weeks ago celebrating that partnership. All of those scheme works are underway, and I think we're doing an extremely good job of providing resilience to our communities and allocating that Crown funding extremely effectively, which hopefully will hold us in good stead if there's a second tranche of funding in that space. The local water done well, which Councillor Conley knows more about than anybody, has occupied a lot of the time in the last quarter readying ourselves for the transition, which we are part of, and there'll be decisions coming to all councils participating in that in the next few months around the transition. And we're also doing a lot of work in the possible changes to the RMA space, which we'll need to come back to you with more detail as they unfold, but I think it is fair to say that's a potentially significant shift in roles of certain functions of councils, regional councils and local councils, and we need to be very closely aligned with that as we go into the future, and we'll keep you up to date if that comes to pass. And finally, one of the KPIs in the CE's KPIs is around Gallup. And as I mentioned earlier, we had 92% participation in our latest Gallup survey, which finished yesterday, which is absolutely world-class by any Gallup metrics. So extremely pleased to be able to let you know that. And we've got the executive here to answer any questions, should you have them.
Councillor Staples.
Thank you. This is a slightly obscure question, Mr. Corrie, in that when you're talking about our need to be on the ball with regards to potential changes in the RMA and our role as a regional council, has there been any discussion about if that's stripped out from us and put somewhere else, how is that somewhere else going to be funded? Is it still going to be up to us to fund it and supply money, or has there been any discussion around that? I know it's a bit obscure.
No, it's not obscure.
For this
Oh,
quarterly report, but
no, it's a relevant question through you, Chair. Look, I think there's a lot of discussion about firstly form and function. So until that's really clearly understood, and we don't know the answer to this, so this is speculation, but for instance, the Spatial Planning Act and the new RMA bill as proposed, that could be a function that actually regional councils do. So that would be an additional function. So regional councils could inherit some functions, or they could potentially lose some functions. That is really unclear at the moment, but the flow on effect to that as to how resourcing is sourced and applied is very much part of the conversation. And there's a lot of work going on, some of which we're aware of between MFE and DIA in particular, looking at actually how consequential changes to functions could flow into funding decisions, outcomes, and where that resource might come from. Similarly, with local water done well, when those functions go out of a number of councils, there's going to have to be the question as to what happens with the rating base for those councils. How do they attract that resource if they need to keep service levels underway? So there's a broader conversation about, should all the reform packages go through the next 3 to 4 or 5 years, local government's structured to a certain degree, let alone its funding mechanisms.
Whenever I've heard ministers certainly talking about removing these functions from regional councils, there's a sort of make Canada's 51st state of the US type dimension to it. There's no real thought about what happens next and what have you, and where do those functions go. It's more a reaction to the fact that regional councils exist, and a lack of understanding about the full gambit of functions we have. So I would suggest that even if there is going to be any move down this road, it's going to take quite a bit of work to actually think through what does it mean once you've actually done that and thought about that. Any other questions? Not Councillor Duthie, then.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Nash.
In the LTP non-financial performance table, all those measures, one of them jumped out positive to me, and it's the annual public transport boardings per capita. So, a question for Tim. Our target for this year is a 64%, 64 boardings per capita, and quarter 3 results 67. So, given challenges with public transport, it's quite positive. Is that because of bus patronage uptick, or is there something else going on there? Is the bus patronage over sort of whelming the rail depressed patronage, or is there something else?
Thank you, and through the chair, yes, we have approximately twice as many bus passengers as we do rail passengers. So at the moment, in totality, our total patronage is not down, slightly up, and that's seen in that metric you're referring to there.
Councillor
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hi, everybody. I was going to ask one about the Metlink. There's a punctuality measure. This is not something we can fix today, but it says on track in the appendix. And I mean, it is technically on track. But one of the things that we have an issue with is early running of buses, and we've been getting quite a few queries about this. And my understanding is that's not captured in the punctuality measure, because the punctuality is you've got to leave within 5 minutes of the schedule. But if you leave before it, then you don't get captured. So I know we're looking at this for future measures, but I think just for clarity for people, because I mean I have been affected by this. So, when your bus is gone,
you don't stand a chance.
It's really annoying, and it's like it's worse than the bus being late actually, because you got there, you got your kids, you got your stuff, and then the bus is already gone, but it shouldn't have gone. And I feel like we should be able to capture this in our KPIs.
Can we take a note of that and maybe come back to that at the appropriate time?
Yep, through the chair, we'll take a note of that. We do know there's commercial arrangements or abatements for early runnings, but in terms of capturing the data, we'll look at that as well.
And I have a couple more points, just small ones. Don't need to deal with them today, but maybe for the next report you do, Nigel, we could. There were a couple of points that we had asked for advice on in the LTP committee around re-wetting the peat and QEP and restoring the general restoration efforts and getting an update on that, seeing where that's happening. We're good to get an update on that in the next report, and likewise opportunities for additional work and activities in the coastal marine area. That was another LTP decision. So if we could get those two maybe covered in the next report, appreciate it. Thanks.
Right, unless there are any other... Oh, one more. Councillor Conley.
So similarly to Councillor Duthie's question around annual public transport boardings being on track, despite the fact that we know that we have a massive problem with rail, I just feel like the Metlink performance indicators do not tell the full story in the rail space. So some of it is because certain metrics haven't been measured, and some of it is because good patronage in bus is compensating for poor patronage in rail. But I feel like we really are at a critical point in our rail performance, and you wouldn't pick that up from reading this report. I also feel like, again, these are functions of the metrics we've used and the timing for assessing those, but I feel like our measurement of disabled people's comfort with our service comes down to increased boardings, and we know that that total mobility is doing really well at the moment, but there are other metrics that we're not doing so well in. So again, it's just, does this tell the complete picture? And I don't feel like it does. And I don't know what the answer to that is, other than changing the metrics, but I just feel like some acknowledgement that that the rail space is very precarious at the moment, and as someone who catches it, I can vouch for the fact that it's not just the Wairarapa that is precarious at the moment. It is not performing as it should.
So can I suggest on that basis? I don't think you're wrong. Maybe we have a workshop that sort of looks at what the dashboard of matrix should actually be, that we can then collapse into the KPIs. So what are all the things that you would expect to see on a dashboard that would tell you that more complete picture? I do think there are some, it does feel like there are some missing elements. Okay.
Given that this is a public document and readily available, is there any chance that we can actually mention that in the preamble to say that council acknowledges this? Because if it just goes out looking like we think it's all fine, on track, we're opening the door to being ridiculed.
Yeah, look, I'm just looking at tolerance off here. We can totally do that. We'll take some of the feedback here. We'll possibly look at some of the narrative in the report as well, and then we can put some either asterisks or provide narrative around some of the metrics. And when we do put that on our public-facing documents, we'll have some amendments to what you see in front of you.
Okay, I don't think that changes the recommendation though. We can do all of that behind the scenes. Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Staples, seconded by Councillor Copeland, who was touching his ear. So all those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Very good. Finance update, item 12. Ashra.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper presents the financial results of the council for the 9 months ended March 2025. The revenue, operating and capital expenditure variances to budget are summarized on pages 100 and 101 of the report. The full year forecast numbers have now been updated based on the third quarter results. They follow the same trend as the actuals, and the forecast surplus is now lower than the budgeted surplus that we had initially planned on. The main reason for this is driven by public transport. It's, as you're aware, mainly a combination of three main factors. One is the Lindrum delays, NLTP funding reductions, and lower fare box revenue. Public transport have lowered their costs to make up for the shortfall, and they are aiming for a balanced result with a downside risk of a funding deficit. At this stage, a minor deficit can be met through reserve funding, and as previously stated, we are keeping a close eye on it. I'll take the report as read, and we are happy to take any questions from the councillors.
Councillors, questions? Councillor Nash.
So thank you for this. Just looking at this in paragraph 7 and in paragraph 9, there's references to national ticketing solution and the cubic CSAM solution integration delays. So this is result. I just was wondering if we could get a little more on those delays. What are we forecasting in terms of those delays? And with the underspend, are we sure that this is money that this is just a delay? We're definitely going to have to spend that money. Can you talk about the delays and the actual financial implications?
Through you, the Chair, I think at some point we'll probably have a workshop as well, because we're currently investigating with Cubic. In fact, we had a meeting between Cubic NZTA and all the PTAs yesterday morning. So it's a workshop over at NZTA. They are rebaselining the project. They're taking a different project methodology now, which is more about small incremental releases across New Zealand. At this stage, we are, from our LTP, at least 12 months behind time in terms of delay. And obviously there'll be reforecasting going forward in terms of what does that mean for us, particularly from a funding implication perspective. So I can't give you an exact date of how long that delay is going to be, but we are told that there will be a full reforecast due by the end of June, at which point we will have all the PTAs having full transparency of when they might expect the national ticketing solution.
So when you say we're 12 months behind, is that 12 months behind for the rollout in the Wellington region or overall for the national project?
For the rollout in the Wellington region is a little complex because we can go in a different order. So the time is based on essentially what order we go in. We were planned to go, I think, 3rd or 4th as a PTA. So it's a little bit moving, but we're about 12 months behind where the project probably would have needed to be. So the solution development is at least 12 months behind at this point.
So 1 year in, we're 1 year behind. So
we've done nothing.
It sounds like we've gone nowhere.
I think as I said, the timeline's being rebaselined at the moment. We'll know at the end of June, but it has been acknowledged that there have been delays, and the complexity was probably underestimated, particularly for the Environment Canterbury rollout, which is the one that's currently underway.
Okay, well, I'm just going to note a concern there from my side.
Councillor Gaylor.
Thank you. Also, my question is relating to paragraph number 7. So could you please just give me a bit of more explanation about the reassessed milestones for the Lindrum, please?
Through your chair, with Lindrum, due to the procurement delays, we had to reassess the revenue milestones associated with the project. So initially we had planned on spending X number for the full year, but due to the delays, we are now pushed it forward. So there's no change to the overall program project per se, but just the individual milestones as we go along the way.
Councillor Colley.
Sorry, rather niche question, and maybe I should have asked it before when we were talking about pushing budgets into next year. But Pinehaven, we've got a $5 million underspend for Pinehaven. Are we going to transfer that to next year so that it can be part of future Pinehaven solutions.
Sorry, I can't remember. Well, it's not on the rebudget
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
I was, through the chair, I thought this might come up, so I was rapidly texting Jack, and that's the one thing I didn't ask. The reason it's so high is because it is loan funded OPEX, so it works a bit like CAPEX. So I'm not sure if that makes a difference in terms of how it's repurposed for next year, but as you know, the review is underway, which is why we've got that variance. I'm not sure if it's being repurposed for next year.
I guess that
or rebudgeted
so
for next
this
year.
is my failure to understand how the finances work. But clearly, if we've rated to do one thing in Pinehaven and we decide not to do that, and we review it and then decide to do another thing, we can't re-rate when we've already rated for those outcomes, right? So I don't know how that works, but if someone could explain that to me, that'd be good.
Through your chair, because this particular project is debt funded, the impact on the rates is minimal as compared to if it were not debt funded.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, the paper's for information only. Right, that takes us to item 12A. Donna Hickey. Last council meeting. There's no 12A. Donna, I just wanted to. I know that you want to exit the organisation quietly, and I totally respect that. But you also have to understand that we have enjoyed your quiet professionalism in the job, that you've undertaken extremely competently, keeping the organisation safe and well staffed. For me, the principal example of that is the man sitting next to me. You found Nigel in your time here. I just wanted to take this time to thank you for your service to the regional council and to enjoy your retirement.
Oh, do I get a right of reply? Am I able to say something?
Yes.
Well, thank you. And just a couple of things. I mean, it's quite liberating when you realise that you can say what you like because you don't need a reference and it doesn't really matter. So you can trust what I say when I say this. I have been so impressed by you all, and I think our ratepayers should be too. I think you've been so principled and such a functional council, which is rare, I have to say. And I have experience of working for other places where they've had very dysfunctional boards, and so I've always been seriously impressed. I haven't quite understood some of it, to be honest, but I really am impressed by the way you all operate, and I think our region is in great hands. And I could also thank you for the way you treat our staff. We I won't steal your thunder, Nigel, about something, but we have a great staff here, and it is really impacted by how you operate, our staff, and how they feel. So if you think we get a good engagement score or you get good vibes from them, that's down to you as well. And I just think you're amazing people, and thank you for taking the time to look after the region and the team. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Okay. Very good.
I'm glad you could resolve to go into public exclusion and take a break.
We'll carry on. Right, let's move to item 13, the resolution to exclude the public. Councillor Gaylor, Councillor Saw, all those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. So we just need to clear the room.